Welcome to the new episode of The City. I am Anthony Wilson, the Public Information Officer for the City of San Angelo. And joining us today is Toni Fox. Toni is the manager of our Water Customer Service Division. Toni, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
I wanted to have you on so you could talk a little bit about how customers can best resolve their issues or questions that they have about their water bills. And we've seen a lot of attention in that regard here lately, and people complaining about sudden spikes in their water bills. Typically, when a customer sees a spike in the water bill, what is that attributed to?
Most of the time we see it as a leak or a malfunction in their sprinkler system or a water softener going bad, toilet running, something like that. That is usually the indication of what the spike is.
Mm-hmm. And so they may not realize that they have, let's say, a leak. How does a customer go about sorting out for themselves whether or not they have a leak or whether perhaps the meter has been read wrongly?
Correct. You know, they don't know a lot of times until they get that bill, and all of a sudden, you know, their $50 bill's $200 or something like that, and they see that their consumption went from 5,000 gallons to 25. So the first thing to do is definitely call our office. We can do a reread. That's usually our first thing to do, is go out and do a reread, especially on the manual reads. The automated readers we don't need to do, we can look that up on the system. But the manual ones we do need to go out and reread. A lot of times, you know, the number's been transposed. Instead of the reader meter reading 228, they've typed in 282 or something like that. So it's just an easy fix that we can do. On the automated meter systems, we can pull up what's going on. We can look and see, oh yeah, you had a spike, or you've got continuous water flow going through. That may be a sprinkler system running, a toilet running, water softener running. So, you know, depending on whether you're a manual reader or those AMRs, we can kind of look at things right away and kind of determine, yes, we need to reread, or no, we see this go on. And even ask the customer, have you fixed a toilet recently? Have you fixed a pipe or anything like that that may cause that spike? Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about two different situations. You're talking about your meters that are read manually versus automated meter readers. Right. Let's talk about the manual meters first. So let's say a meter reader comes out, they confirm that the reading on the bill is correct. What can a customer do then to try to decipher whether or not they may have some sort of continual leak?
Okay. One of the things on those manual reads is a little triangle, and when we send folks out to reread, they also look to see if that meter is indicating any kind of leak. If it is, they'll mark it on the reread and let us know that, so we can let the customer know that. If they're not seeing that and the read is good, then we ask them to go, you know, do you remember anything? You know, did you have family in that may have, you know, upped your consumption for some reason? Do you leave a hose running to water trees or something during that time frame? If no, then we've got to go look, and we just kind of watch them for a little bit to see, let's see if it goes down the next month, if there's a continual increase in their water usage over the next month or two to indicate that. Sometimes those leaks are so small that that meter may not pick it up, but it's still enough to cause an increase in their billing, in their usage.
You have told me before that, for instance, if you have a small leak in your toilet, let's say the flapper isn't completely sealing after a toilet has been flushed, you may not hear it, you may not see it, but nonetheless, over the course of a month, that adds up to thousands and thousands of gallons.
It can, because basically that's just like turning on a faucet, and you won't see it because it's not on the outside, it's on the inside. So it's coming in your faucet and going right out your sewer system. So you won't see it, you may not hear it, and unless it's dripping behind the toilet and you see water there or something, yeah, that could be running and you not even know it.
And so you encourage people to try to troubleshoot those things themselves, because let's say it is a faulty flapper, replacing something like that may cost $5 in 10 minutes. Right.
It's a little manual labor, $5 at the hardware store, and you can fix it easily to where, you know, if you have to call a plumber and have them troubleshoot it, it could cost you hundreds of dollars.
With the automated meter readers, which we typically call AMRs, talk a little bit about what those are and how they work.
Well, those send a reading signal to, you know, through the system, through up into the radio waves, into our system every night. And they record every 15 minutes, but we only see the hourly total. But if there's a continuous flow or some kind of intermittent flow, it will indicate that, because they are registering flow every 15 minutes. If you have like 15-minute flows, it'll tell you it's intermittent. If you have 90 or more 15-minute flow of water. It'll tell us it's a continuous flow. So those send their radio signals to us. We upload that every night. So what you do today, we can look at tomorrow and pinpoint how many gallons you use each hour.
And so if you see that continual usage, you know at that point that someone has a leak.
Right. If we see that you're using three gallons an hour, especially like at 1, 2, 3 in the morning when people are usually sleeping, we figure that something's running there. And the first place I ask people to look is their toilets, because they are the #1 user of water in a home. So that's what I say. Let's go look at your toilets. Let's go see. You may not always hear them, and it could just be a little small thing that's doing 2 or 3 gallons an hour. But you do that every day, all day, that will add up over a month's time.
Now the city is moving toward having automated meter readers for all of our water customers. Do you know at this point how many of our customers, what percentage of our customers have the automated meters versus the manual meters?
We have a little over 21,000 meters that have the AMRs on them, and we are putting in about 35,000. So we're about 2/3 away. The project should be done by the end of 2014.
Now, is there any possibility that the meters may malfunction and cause some sort of spike or in a customer's water bill?
Yeah, I guess anything's possible, and meters do go bad every once in a while, but usually when meters go bad, they go bad in the customer's favors, not ours. Not that they can't go bad in our favor, but you know, usually they slow down, they're not registering as much water. But you know, strange things happen and anything's possible, but most of these are new meters, and you know, it's unlikely that that will happen the majority of the time. Majority of the time we find that there's a leak somewhere in the customer's home. They've got water flowing through somewhere.
Or they may have used a high amount of water and not necessarily realized it at the time.
Right. Some of the people call and say, you know, my sprinkler can't use that much water. And when I tell them it used 1,200 gallons between this hour and 16 between this hour and 1,600 between that hour, they're amazed at how much water their sprinkler systems use. So it is very important to keep an eye on those sprinkler systems and make sure they're running when they're supposed to, and are you putting too much water down? So, you know, sprinklers do use a lot of water, and a lot of people are amazed how much water they use in that hour time frame.
You have a leak adjustment program in your division. Right. Talk a little bit about what that is and how does it work?
The city ordinance allows a leak adjustment once every 3 years. If we come out, you know, you get a spike in your bill, and you call us and, oh, yep, I did. My toilet was leaking, I changed the flapper out. We have a leak adjustment form you fill out. You fill it out, turn it into us, and we wait and make sure that your bill has gone back down to normal consumption. And then we submit it to billing to do the adjustment, and they bring it back down to your normal average. So that's easy to do once every 3 years. If you're on automatic meter and we can see that that continuous flow is now gone, we can submit that even earlier than the 2 months. But we like to have at least 1 month, if not 2 months, for the manual meters to make sure that we capture all the leaks, because we do the 2 highest months. So if you're caught with that break in between reads, it may carry over to that 2nd month. So we want to make sure we catch it all before we go do the adjustment for you. We put you out on extension so you don't get cut off. You are still required to make your normal average payment. You don't get to not pay. And we take off the late fee, so you're not, you know, penalized for that while we're waiting for the leak adjustment.
Are you seeing more increases in sudden spikes in bills, or does there just seem to be more public attention called to this at the moment?
We're not seeing any pattern that would suggest there's an increase. I just think a lot of it's the public attention. More people are aware now that, yeah, I can get a leak adjustment. We're seeing, you know, more leak adjustments, but the hot weather, the cold weather, shifting of the ground and stuff can cause pipes to break, you know, older equipment, things like that. But we're not seeing anything that suggests that the pattern has changed. It's just more aware of it.
Before a bill goes out, if there is a sudden increase in a bill higher than normal, is there any procedure in place to red flag those bills before they're actually sent to the customer?
Yes, billing does poll those. They do get a list, they poll them, they bring it to us, and we try to contact the customer. This is where it's important that we have a good phone number for them, just for that reason, so we can call and say, Anthony, we see a spike on your bill here. Has anything happened at your house? If we can't get you by phone because your phone number is not working and we don't have a good number, then we have to send out a blue card to your house. So if you get a blue card on your door, please call us, find out what's going on, because, you know, especially if it says something like, we need to discuss your account. you could be one of those that we're seeing a spike in your bill, and we want to talk to you. We don't want to just send you a $1,500 bill, we don't want to panic you, because if there is a leak and you know there's been a leak, but that still shocks you, because it would shock me. We want to be able to get a hold of you first, see what's going on, let you know, hey, this has happened, we've got a large bill, we've got a spike in your bill. Have you had a leak? Has something gone on different that hasn't happened before, so we can start working it immediately instead of waiting.
You mentioned earlier, though, you have 35,000, in excess of 35,000 accounts. Mm-hmm. So I assume that some of those bills may get out regardless of your best efforts.
Yes, we're human. The billing department's human. They try to grab them, but yes, things will happen. And all we ask is, if you get something like that, call us, please. Call us, because we'll certainly look at it and find out what's going on, apologize that slipped out, but things do happen, and unfortunately we do make mistakes and we don't catch everything. So
you mentioned call us. So is that the best first step whenever someone gets in a bill that they have some concern or question about, is calling the Water Customer Service Division?
Absolutely. Call our number, talk to one of the ladies, and I would recommend when you're talking to them, make sure you get their name. So when you call back, we all put notes in the system when we've talked to customers, especially on these high bills, the spikes or things like that. Or if you call in and say, hey, I had a leak, I know, I just found it, it's probably been going on. We go put notes in there, customer called, had a leak, so we know in advance that you may be getting a higher bill. But, we want to know and make sure, because when you call back and say, oh, I don't know who I talked to, if they didn't have time to put notes, or it was just a couple quick questions, then we are starting all over again, to where we can look at those notes and say, oh yes, I see here that this person stated and you did call on this, let's see what else is going on, and they know where to go for the paperwork or information from that other customer service rep.
So very quickly, give us the number that people should call if they have questions about their water bill.
657-4323.
We've been talking with Toni Fox. She is the manager of the Water Customer Service Division. We will be back in a moment to talk with our budget manager, Morgan Trainer, about the city's capital improvement program. But first, we're going to spotlight another outstanding city employee, Lori Davila, in our Civic Events Division.
I'm Lori Davila. I've been with the city for 16 years, and I am the contract facilitator with the Civic Events Division. I'm usually the first contact a client will initiate when calling about any rental facility that the city owns, as far as the Coliseum, Convention Center, River Stage, Paseo, and the Pecan Creek Pavilion. From there, we go with checking dates availability, what the needs are, how much space they need. Once the client pinpoints a date and we know what their event is, I can work with the client on their special needs as far as place settings, any linens. I mean, we want to fulfill their event as best we can. A lot of that we can forward information to other areas, as far as staging, sound techs, whatever they need for that event. I've only been doing contract facilitating for about 7 years. I was the staff manager, the operations supervisor for 8 years, and I overseen and worked with the staff. I worked on the floor, set up the stage, the chairs, moved tables, so I know exactly what the staff goes through when they have to turn over event, set up, clean the bathrooms. So we try to work with them to get their job done quickly and safely, give them enough time in between events. So it makes a big difference to know both sides of that wheel. I like the details of the events once they are completed, watching the girls, the ladies, and for the weddings, the Kinseys, their eyes when the decorators finish and they're surprised that this building is this building once it's decorated. Or the concrete pavilion, you can walk in with columns and fabric and flowers, but then the big events, the awards, we have a lot of military events here, and it's very pristine. I don't know, it's just different every day. You're proud to work here. I guess because I always work behind the scenes in years past, and people think, oh, how fun, y'all are doing all these events. But we don't see those events. We're behind the curtains, we're cleaning the bathrooms, taking tickets at the front doors. We never see the activity. And I try to buy tickets to everything we can. My husband likes to go to the events. We go to the symphony, the Thompson Blues concerts. We just like to go to stuff. In my spare time, we travel extensively. My husband and I, we go on some really big vacations, really long vacations. We travel on the weekends. We go to a lot of auctions. We even do some of the storage locker auctions, but we've been doing those before it became popular on TV. He does a lot of eBay for some of the stuff we do, but he's very creative. He welds really well, so he buys a lot of things and creates, and we sell them. So we like to do auctions and travel. I moved to San Angelo in 1992, and we never left. You know, it's kind of in the heart of Texas. You pretty much have seasonal weather, not as bad as maybe the Panhandle, but it's close. We can travel to the Longhorn games in Austin. We can go to the Texas Tech games in Lubbock, and we're happy. We love it here. A good day after a long day at work is going home and knowing my husband has dinner ready, because he loves to cook outside and he does it all year long. He's really good about doing stuff like that, and he works for Parks Department. He's picked up something that someone threw in the dumpster and he's brought it back to life, and we have new hedges or flowers or some pot that he's redone or made or created, and he has plants in it for me, and when I open the garage door they're sitting there on the floor, so that's a good day. Always have flowers.
Welcome back to the city. We are joined now by our budget manager, Morgan Trainer. She's actually our first return guest on the city. Morgan, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me here.
Now you're here to talk about the capital improvement program.
Correct. I'm very excited. It's our time of year to start preparing the CIP. So
we'll talk about what the CIP, as we like to call it, is.
Sure. You know, we love acronyms. So we call it the CIP. It's easy to refer to, and it's for big capital items. It's a 5-year plan that we update every year, and we put big ticket items in there that we can talk more about, but that's the purpose of it, is to have a list of identified needs, capital items that are needed to help improve this community.
Now, when you talk about those big ticket needs, give us some examples of the sort of projects and maybe some recent projects that have been funded through the CIP.
Sure. We've had, for example, building a new park. That's a CIP project. Buying a laptop computer, not a CIP project. And so that's why the CIP is kind of unique, is it's a good way to get almost a laundry list of just everything going on in the city, across the gamut, across all services, everything that's needed to continue providing service to our citizens.
And when you talk about the CIP, how are these items funded? Are they funded just in our normal annual budget, or is there a separate budget that addresses these projects?
Sure, they're funded through a variety of ways. We're lucky to take advantage of several grants that fund CIP projects. The most common of that you'll see is at the airport. They have several FAA grants that we provide a local match, and they help us build, for example, the terminal building. Anybody that's flown out of San Angelo recently has seen the construction going on out there, and we're very excited to get that finished and debut our new airport terminal. And so that's a current CIP project that's going on that's funded through a grant. They're also funded through, for example, on your utility bill that citizens pay every month. A portion of your water bill goes into a CIP fund, so much needed improvements can be made to the water system, wastewater system, even needs out at the landfill.
Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about CIPs, that obviously begins with a need, but how does that need sort of surface, become a part of the plan, and gets prioritized within those 5 years that you talked about?
Sure, it's a job to gather all this information, to make sure that we're not leaving anything out. It starts first with each division manager. So for example, the airport manager would identify that he has these runways that need to be rehabbed, different things like that. And so it starts with on the division manager level, where they submit a detailed page for each project. They send it to my office. We start reviewing it. We meet with the CIP committee, which includes city management and my staff, and we go through that list, make sure there's nothing missing, and make sure that what's on there is appropriate and is what we want to report in this year's CIP. Then the most important part of the process is we take it to public comment. This is very much about providing the citizens what they want in their community and putting their tax dollars to use in an appropriate way. And so we go out for public comment, and we'll have special meetings to do that. And not to mention we'll be at City Council during regularly scheduled meetings to get direction from the public and council. So it's a process, and we try to get input from all of the vested members of the community so that it's a good document that the City Council can use to make decisions in the future.
Now, when you talk about the public participating in these forums to give some input as to what ought to be the priorities that are funded through the CIP, when they do that, are they welcome to bring ideas of their own that may not be part of the plan, or are they asked to comment on and talk about what their priorities are among the projects that have been submitted?
All of that, yes, absolutely. We have the special public meetings in neighborhoods, and the intent is for the CIP to be published. It's online by February 5th. It'll be available online. We're still polishing it and drafting it and getting all of that information together. But it'll be online by February 5th. Citizens can download it, or they can call my office at 653-6291 and acquire a hard copy. I can mail it to them, or they can stop by. That way they know what's already been submitted and approved or proposed, and bring their own ideas. For example, a very popular one has been to talk about implementing a dog park in San Angelo. Unfortunately, it's not something that's been able to be included in the parks master plan, but we absolutely want to hear from the citizens what's important to them. And so not only what staff has already identified, but what are your ideas for us expanding services for what's important to yourself.
And then following those meetings, then I assume that the City Council approves the CIP, and then that is in some way becomes part of the annual budget.
Sure. The CIP is mandated by our city charter. It was important enough. We had a big water main break in December of 2006, and we started realizing that we really need a comprehensive, formalized list of these projects. And so we had a citizen action team, a volunteer group that came together and helped draft some language for what the CIP should be. And then we took it to the voters and actually had it formally added to our city charter. That means that it is our law that we will adopt a CIP every year. Staff thought it was important enough that we absolutely be held to that and held accountable to the citizens in that way. And so in the CIP charter, in the city charter, it states that we will have these public meetings, we will include this kind of information in the CIP, for example, and it will ultimately be adopted by resolution by City Council.
Mm-hmm. And so then the top projects that rise to the top of the CIP, I guess in what would be year one, are those the ones that are then blended into the budget?
Sure, that's what the goal is to match available funding to those very important projects. And so, for example, drainage remediation has been a big deal in San Angelo, and that's a fancy way of saying we need to get the rainwater off the streets and make it safe for houses and people to travel on the roads. And so starting the drainage remediation process, it's at Avenue P and South Bryant. There's been a huge issue there, and so that is some money, that is an optimal way the CIP worked. It was submitted in the CIP, it was adopted as part of a capital plan and a need. When it came time to adopt the budget, we set aside some funds for some capital needs, and then later worked through a process of, well, what can we afford to do? And it was important enough that we need to fund that drainage remediation issue, and we parked some money and budgeted some money for that item, and it's moving forward in the design phase.
Are there certain parameters for what constitutes a CIP? In other words, does it have to be a certain dollar amount, or does it have to be a certain lifespan of whatever it is that is being bought or built?
Yes, there are some accounting procedures that go into that say what is a capital item. In the city charter, we were lucky enough to not have it really strictly mandated because, of course, as inflation changes and dollar amounts rise, we want that flexibility. But generally, our standard operating procedure is projects over $100,000. So these are big ticket items, items that have a useful life of over 2 years, and of course, items that contribute to the quality of life of citizens in San Angelo. That's our basic parameters.
So what do you recall as being some of the projects that were in, let's say, year one of last year's CIP?
Well, City Hall project, that was a project that was going on for several years, and last year it was adopted in the CIP, and this year it's done. So that's a good success story. Concho River Bank stabilization, that is a project that was in last year's CIP that is almost complete. The livestock barn out at the rodeo grounds, the Coliseum grounds, that's a project that was in last year's CIP that is making headway.
So and some of those projects are half-cent sales tax projects that the voters approve. So if the voters approve those, you can guarantee that those are going to be in the CIP at some point in some form or fashion.
Absolutely. The ones with those identified funding source, like the half-cent sales tax, it was put on the ballot. We were going to build a livestock barn, and we did. We're going to, absolutely. So when there's restricted funding tied to that, for example, the FAA grants or your water bill, we absolutely, those are the projects that are going to happen. The other ones that have no funding source, those are the ones with a question mark by them in the CIP. We know we need to do them, but it's just a matter of money. And so, for example, in last year's CIP, there were a total of 66 projects. That doesn't sound like a lot. If we did all of them in the proposed 5-year plan, it would cost over $450 million. That's a big undertaking. And to put it in perspective, our annual operating budget for 1 year is $134 million. So we would have to have almost 4 years of doing nothing but CIP just to address those projects. And of course, we can't turn off the lights at the Public Information Office. So it's quite an undertaking to decide how are we going to fund improvements, for example, at Fort Concho. Absolutely need to preserve that historic site, but there's not readily available funding to directly route to that program. So it's a struggle, and it's something we talk about during the budget process. So it's nice to have this formalized adopted plan that we can take into budget and say, here are some immediate needs.
So then there's not necessarily a set dollar amount that you're looking to spend in year one. It's what are the greatest needs that we think we can afford, and then we sort of build the budget around those projects.
Yes, that does happen, yes.
So you mentioned these meetings. When are the meetings going to be, and how can people learn more about them?
Sure, we're still finalizing the details and location, but as I said, they're going to be neighborhood meetings, and so there should be one on your side of town. They will be the evening of February 7th, which is a Thursday, and the evening of February 12th. And so be sure to check out the city's Facebook page and the homepage at sanangelotexas.us. We'll be publishing the information of where those locations will be and what times. Not to mention, we're going to discuss it at regular city council meetings on February 19th, the first meeting in March, and March 19th.
And so March 19th, is that when the plan would be formally adopted by the city council?
Correct, yes. There's still going to be some discussion, but it will be opened up for public comment and then finalized in the adoption of a resolution.
And you said earlier that the plan will be available online for viewing beginning on February the 5th.
Correct.
And so just to make sure that people realize, our website is sanangelotexas.us, and Texas is spelled out. And they can also access that information via the city's Facebook and Twitter pages.
Absolutely.
Which you can also access from the website.
Yes.
So are you anticipating a large turnout for the public meetings?
Yes, we've had really good luck getting people out and getting interested parties that want things changed in their community. And so we want to hear from those people, and we're glad to accept that in any way we can. And so when people come to the meetings, that's a great way to have some interactive feedback, but also people are certainly welcome to email me at morgan.trainer@sanangelotexas.us or call me at 653-6291. We want to get that public feedback however we can.
We've been talking with Budget Manager Morgan Trainer, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode of The City.